Ollie, welcome to the Can I Be Open podcast. Your second appearance on a podcast of mine, but not the same one, of course.
Mm.
Thacker Sunday Hangover all those years ago, and we were just talking about it literally 30 seconds ago. But that was in May 2021, and it feels like yesterday. So, honestly, how time flies. But
Yeah.
obviously, since that time,
Mm.
so much has changed in your life, mate. So talk us through like where you're at today.
Hello, mate. Thanks for having me on, but also back. It's a real pleasure. Yeah, I think since we last spoke on a pod, I mean, over 3 years ago, a lot has changed. I'm living in Colombia. I've been here for over 3 years. Still working in social media content, and now have a music project of my own, trying to be an artist and kind of see where that journey takes me. And yeah, just trying to enter with the new phase of my life, being a little bit more adult, a little bit more mature, but still kind of have that creativity and that playfulness that I think one requires to maintain a healthy balance in life.
Yeah, I think we're at similar points in that regard because I always felt like I wanted to be Peter Pan and never grow up and always just be having fun. And
Yeah.
it's now got to a point in your life where you're like, okay, all right, maybe try time to dial up the maturity meter a little bit, only a smidge though. You still want to have
Mm.
fun.
Yeah.
But mate, amazing that you've moved to Colombia, and actually, I think somewhere that especially in Britain, where you'll still have a lot of friends and where you were living previously, where we'll probably have a lot of misconceptions about the country.
Yeah.
So I was actually really curious as to how your adjustment moving from obviously Britain to Colombia was, and how is life there?
Um, it was hard. It was really it threw me challenges that I just didn't really expect, and I think like um, it, it 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 threw me curveballs literally within the first 2 weeks. I was like, where the am I allowed to swear on this, by the way?
Oh yeah, go for it, mate. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, it threw me curveballs where I was like, what the fuck is this? Um, but now again, like speaking about processes, I'm kind of going through a process right now. And upon reflection, like I think it was the start of a healing journey that I could never have gone down in the UK. And I know, it's sometimes a bit of a weird concept to kind of look back and then give kind of retrospective meaning to moments in life. But I think, with what has happened in the last 3 years, it's too coincidental to kind of say otherwise. And obviously, when you move to a new part of the world where I knew, Colombia fairly well. I've got family here, a lot of it, far more family here than in the UK. Um, I'd spent, months and lived here, prior. So I kind of, it was strange. I was coming in with a perception of what I thought it would be like, and it delivered in that sense, but it also delivered in other ways where I wasn't ready, um, but I'm extremely grateful for.
I mean, if you're happy to share maybe some of those examples where you've landed and in
Mhm.
those first 2 weeks, this new culture, this new place has kind of come and smacked you in the face with maybe a reality check for what life is going to be like. Do you have any kind of examples of that that stick fresh in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, on the surface of what I'm about to say, most Brits will turn around and go, "Oh, well, that sounds really wanky." Um, but within the first 2 weeks of being here, still kind of pandemic times, we weren't in lockdown here, but even in the street, if you were walking, you had to wear a mask. Like it was illegal to not have a mask in the street. And I was going to a WeWork here, and I was working, but obviously, open air and 2 meters, social distancing and all this kind of stuff. And I was living with some people. I wasn't even with family. And within the first 2 weeks of being here, I suddenly get COVID, and but I don't mean like, oh yeah, the sniffles and I lost my sense of smell and taste. No, like this was fucking like 2 weeks in bed, symptoms changing every 2 days, um, severe, excretions and a hell of a lot of weight loss
Man.
within 2 weeks. And obviously, I got here heartbroken, looking for change, looking for a new start, looking for new opportunities just for me and my own mind. And suddenly, everything's exciting. Obviously, you're still suffering and still kind of going through it, but it's still exciting. There's something new to kind of go, all right, what's happening this weekend? What's happening this week? And then all of a sudden you have to literally stop, be in bed for 2 weeks. My flatmates all left the apartment. One of them they both went on holiday. And then I was literally, I had more of a relationship with the fucking delivery man bringing me food every 3 days than I did with anyone else. And my mind, obviously, I spiraled, completely. It unlocked all of this trauma that I didn't really acknowledge that I had, and it literally slapped me in the face and said, "Right, you've got to front this. You've got to get over this. You've got to really work on it." And obviously, your question of what's the cultural differences. The cultural differences is like people here are so much more connected with energy and open to it. Like I spoke with a friend from London the other day, and he said, "Yeah, I think we say the same thing. Yeah, they've got good vibes. They've got good vibes." But from my perspective, when you say, "Oh yeah, they've got good vibes" or whatever, like it's quite superficial. It's not actually that deep. When someone here says like, "Oh, they've got a really nice energy," that actually has like a spiritual meaning to it. Like it's not something that is kind of like off the cuff or on a whim. And I think I lacked that in the UK. I lacked that in London. Obviously I'm very grateful for London and what it taught me. But yeah, literally 2 weeks, that door just slammed shut, that kind of chapter of, okay, no, right, this is it. It's time to fucking work and it's time to go. Um, and it was dark. It was really dark. I mean, it was like 26 years of bullshit coming up where you go, okay, I now really need to front up.
So was that during that 2 weeks? Obviously, you're going through a breakup. Am I understanding it?
Yeah.
And then you're ill, which is obviously never nice. But then with COVID, you're
Mm.
isolated, so that's obviously maybe exacerbating the feeling that you're feeling from the breakup as well. So
Yeah.
you know when you're sitting with that feeling and having those challenging thoughts, if you're comfortable, obviously, like, can
Mm.
you talk us through just what other things that was bringing up within you during that 2 week period
Mm.
where you were being faced with such a like, okay, this is what you need to confront. This is the thing. This is the sign that something
Yeah.
needs to change.
Um, I think, it was stuff from school and stuff from my tennis days. I wanted to be a tennis player. I went down that high performance kind of pathway from the age of 10 to 18, an extremely difficult pathway and obviously extremely isolating sport, which is tennis. Um, and I've never really like been that bothered by failure or kind of not succeeding. Um, because I've always kind of taken it on the chin and learned from it and really tried to kind of just sit with it and allow it to take me to something new. Um, but in this moment of extreme isolation, parents are not around. Obviously, my uncle and auntie and my cousins were so present, bringing me food and making sure that I was okay and everything. But it brought up this overwhelming feeling of, but why me? Because again, you start to look at it and you go, well, I have flatmates and I was with them constantly and none of them are ill. I've been with my family and none of them are ill. Like, where have I picked this up from? Like, where the fuck has this come from? And why is it only me? And so obviously, like, when you start to kind of put yourself in that victim light, obviously anger comes out of nowhere. And I'm someone that I'd like to think is fairly controlled with my own anger. I don't really like to ever use it on other people. I don't want to ever cross that line. I think the only person I've ever really crossed that line with is my sister. But I learned very quickly to not cross that line and walk away and breathe and just take all the fucking fire out of those situations and then be able to communicate properly. Um, but it was this intense anger that genuinely just it torched everything, really did. And at that point, I'm very lucky I had a job that was stable and paying me fairly well. So I still had something that was giving me at least some form of stability that really um, helped me in a sense. And to be honest, like I was never close to doing any kind of form of physical harm to myself. But when you get to that type of low, I really understood why people drink and abuse their bodies with substances or harm themselves. Like it was an understanding where I go, okay, like you just want the pain gone. You want to numb it in any way you can. And obviously going down the road of therapy or any sort of kind of therapeutic process is hard. It's fucking hard. Um, and I'm obviously extremely grateful for the journey of tennis because you know how hard it is. And obviously it's very different context, but it gives you that ability to go one more day, just one more day. That's all it is. Like just get through today and you can fall asleep and you can do it again tomorrow. Like don't even look past tomorrow. Um, so yeah, it brought up so many deep and hidden aspects of my upbringing that I'd pushed under the carpet. And obviously if you sweep too much under the carpet, you know, you get a fucking mound.
Yeah, no, mate, I really appreciate you sharing so openly. Genuinely, it's you can tell there's a lot of raw emotion there, but I think
Mm,
actually a lot of people who are listening will resonate with because we've all gone through kind of times in our life where things feel overwhelmingly challenging, and especially I think the COVID example will give people, it will bring people back to those times where at some
yeah.
point most people were locked in their room, isolated away from people, not necessarily able to vent, to talk, to experience normal life. And it seems like that was maybe something that was creating a disconnect where you weren't
Mm,
necessarily able to potentially healthily process some of those things you were going through.
mm,
However, there were some things that were potentially part of your routine, like sport, which we know to be such a great thing. First of all, when it comes to routine, but physical
mm.
exertion, all this kind of stuff that we know that can boost mental well-being. But that was your kind of ballast, it sounds like, to kind of get you through that difficult time, and something that you can maybe rely on, at least in the short term, to maybe get you through that difficult period.
Funny enough, it wasn't because my body was just pooped. Like
Sure.
I couldn't do anything. Like I mean, so this is it's funny you bring this up because um, it took away my ability to be able to exercise for probably about 3 or 4 months. Like I was so breathless,
Wow.
um, and it took away my ability to sing. And I remember speaking to someone that my mum is friends with, who's a Buddhist, and I spoke to him kind of quite quickly after recovering, doing my 2 weeks of COVID. I was something like 56 kilos. I was skinny as a twig. Um, and I said to him, I feel like I've lost my identity because I can't play sport and I can't sing. And he goes, that's not your identity. Like those are things you can do. Those are talents you have acquired and, honed. But that's not your identity. That's not what makes you Ollie, and that, still sticks with me today. I was kind of like, fuck, like, what is my identity, even when I'm good or when I'm bad? And so that was really interesting. What I mean by being grateful for the tennis was just the discipline,
Hmm.
like the discipline to go and just do it. Like it is a muscle. Like you need to be educated in it. Like it's not, obviously there are some people in this world that get born with it. They're just like tunnel vision to anything they do. But most people aren't like that. I wasn't like that for a long time away from the tennis court. Like my life was a complete mess. Like, and then it's very strange how I've gone through these times of crisis and it's like a switch. Like it just, you turn it on and it's like, boom, routine, looking for new things, expanding my mind, trying to learn as much as possible, trying to be as healthy kind of physically and mentally. Um, and I had a bit of an out of body experience kind of quite soon after COVID where my cousin was taking me home because I was hanging out at his house and I just said some really like angry things, not at him, but just about me and my situation in the world. And I almost had this like out of body experience where I was like, the fuck are you talking about? Like, what, why is this coming out of your mouth? And that next day, like I just went online and found a therapist. And it was, again, it's like this kind of this flicking of a switch. And I remember my cousin being like messaging me that next day being like, I'm really, really worried about you. But it was already after I'd found the therapist. And so I said, I've got the therapist. Like, I know you're worried and I was worried. That's why I found the therapist. So it's really strange how, these things can trigger you in good ways. Obviously there's bad triggers, but sometimes, it just does randomly come to you. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's maybe what a lot of people talk about when you need to give yourself time to come to those
Mm,
realizations, and I think that sometimes time is a commodity that is so scarce these days because we're being pulled from every which direction for our time and our attention and our energy. I think sometimes actually to just sit with, and this is something that I actually talked with Nick about on the first episode, is actually to
mhm.
just be able to be present and to sit with yourself is one of the most impactful and valuable things that we can do, because like you
Yeah.
experience sometimes that you can have those moments of realization and self-actualization that you check yourself and go, okay, actually, where am I at the moment? Am I living in my values? You know,
Mm,
is other things that are coming out of my mouth, other things that I'm saying actually aligned to who I am as a person and who I want to be? And
yeah.
only through that, and only through that kind of self discovery are we able to then move on with our lives to get to a point where you are truly enjoying life and who you want to be as a person. But
Yeah.
there was another thing you kind of mentioned around the sport being the thing that kind of you tether to when it comes to almost as a reset, or
Mm,
something that when you want to launch into a different passion or a different project or something that you want to set your mind to, it's the discipline of sport and that process that kind of gives you the ballast. I'm
yeah.
interested to know, are you kind of aware of when it is when you're feeling out of sorts or when you are in a difficult moment, what particular point you need to kind of say, okay, now's the time for a reset, and then that's when this kind of reliance of sport kicks in, or is it more of a feeling?
Ooh. I
We
think it's
don't we
just more
don't
when,
we don't ask easy questions here on the
no,
show, Nick.
I think it's just more when crisis hits. Like it's my fallback. Like it just kicks in. It's like, okay, right, you're fucked. Let's go. Like, it's simple as that. Like, 5 months ago it happened again, and it was and we'll talk about that. My whole life basically just caved in on itself within a week, and it's this. And this is the thing. Like, this is something that I struggle with, especially in these crisis moments. Is like it's almost like autopilot. Like this routine and discipline just comes in out of nowhere. But then my mind takes this really strange thing where it beats the shit out of me. Like I don't know if you've seen like that very famous like Jocko Williams or Wilkinson, whatever his name is, clip where he's talking about you need to take 100% responsibility for your life, otherwise you're never going to get shit done. And I kind of adopt that where, and I know it's unhealthy. Like, don't get me wrong, it's something that I'm really trying to work on, like being. compassionate to myself because I go into this crisis mode, discipline goes through the roof, this unbelievable routine comes out of nowhere that in normal, circumstances would be really bloody healthy. Like it would be so good for anybody. Some people might call it obsessive, but sometimes it's what you need to get through the day and get through the mud. But my mind goes into this like, you're a piece of shit. It's your fault. Why did you make that mistake? Why didn't you do this sooner? And it's just like, stop, like stop. This has to change. Because I mean, even like in good times, I am very compassionate to others and even myself, but the compassion comes far more to external sources, probably before even my own internal thoughts. So that's been something that the last 5 months has been really important to just wire down. And obviously, we're bookending this podcast with two crises, but yeah, I guess we'll get into that as well.
Yeah, I think it's something you bring up though resonates with me a lot because self-talk is so impactful and
Mm.
actually I think actually a lot of people in the UK will resonate with this because I think as a culture we are naturally self-deprecating and so we're
Yeah.
always very quick to criticize and say when something's wrong. So for instance, my natural tendency when I mess up is to have an inner voice that goes, like you're effing and blinding at myself, saying you've messed up and all this kind of stuff. And actually, it takes an immense discipline and a checking of behaviours to actually start to change that.
Yeah.
It takes it's a kind of like you say, it's a training, it's a tool that you have to repeat again and again and again. That in
Mm.
the response to some kind of crisis or even something small where something's gone wrong or you're feeling out of sorts, to actually go, okay, like
Mm.
let's just calm down
Yeah.
and not necessarily self-criticize, but actually give yourself that compassion, like you say. I think it's super important.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've lost my train of thought, and this is going to be edited out. But yeah, but are you happy to share, mate? Just
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
little way of checking in. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, So one other thing I wanted to ask you is obviously you mentioned that you took the step to see a therapist, which is
Hmm.
obviously admirable because I think it definitely takes a lot of bravery and courage to actually first of all admit that you may need some help, but then to also go and seek it. Um,
Yeah.
just to kind of not necessarily go into the details, but as to how that process has been,
Mm.
and maybe
Yeah.
any kind of tools that you're using in response to some of the things that have happened.
Ooh. So I'll tell you that the therapy I went into 3 years ago is something called EMDR. And it's basically an eye movement directional therapy that allows you to process trauma. It's the first thing that they'll send, soldiers with PTSD to do once they've come home. And I honestly could not speak more highly of it because genuinely it was one of the most incredible experiences. Like it was a 2 year journey. I finished it roughly kind of end of November. I mean, officially with the processing, I finished it kind of end of November last year. Um, and like it's, I was sleepwalking with this trauma on my shoulders, which I just didn't realize I had. And it was dictating my relationships and it was dictating my friendships and it was dictating the decisions that I made. And I didn't even realize. And when you then finish it, and this is what I mean about discipline, I was going every single week without fail. Um, didn't scare me. It was bloody hard, and the way that it works, you sit there, and I can send you a video, if you want to use it in a clip. Like you sit there in front of this panel of lights, and it just goes back and forth, and all you do is you keep your head still, and you just follow the lights with your eyes, and you do that for maybe like 2 minutes. Then you'll say to your therapist like what it is that's come up what images have come to your brain around the thing that you're processing, the moment that you're processing, and then you go again. And it's not like, oh, I have an hour of talking and I'm going to talk about my feeling. No, this is like methodical, scientific. And sometimes, yeah, you disconnect. Like the brain can't concentrate for that long, that quickly. You know, sometimes you think about your day, your work, your football club, or whatever it might be. You know, by the way, up the Arsenal. Let's go.
Cutting that out straight
Yeah,
away.
1-0, 1-0. Sorry, I digress. But honestly, like finishing that process and like breathing for the first time, obviously metaphorically, with no trauma active was one of the most like uplifting and enlightening moments I think I've ever gone through. Um, and I think, you know, again, like being a tennis player from such a young age, like, or high performance athlete in, you know, from a young age, you speak to psychologists, like you have that. So for me to reach out and want to find somebody is not hard. And I do realize how much of a privilege that is, because for a lot of people, it is extremely difficult. But it is the best thing that you can do. Like it just is. Um, Someone that's not a friend or a family, because again, egos and perceptions and context, it's not enough. Like you're never in the shoes of somebody else. Like, you know, you said to me a bit earlier, like I will try and give you advice. Thacker, I don't want your advice because you just don't know enough. You don't live in my heart. Like you don't know. So I don't need you to say that. All I need you to do is sit there and listen. That's it. You know, make me feel heard, and that will push me through the day. Um, and I mean, I'm back in therapy right now, but this is far more spiritual. Like you know, this crisis hit me again, and the first thing I did was look for spirituality because I knew it wasn't a trauma. I knew it wasn't a traumatic event. It was just fucking life, you know. And at that point, again, like, you know, going back to the energy concept, things have happened to me in this country that I could not really tell you how. You know, it's not coincidence. You know, this place has a power for me that is pushing me exactly where I want to be and exactly on the path I want to go down. You know, and when that happens, you don't fight it, you just go with it. You know, and so obviously when this happens, in the moment, you know, in a crisis, you know, sometimes you don't get the perspective of why this is happening. And I was like, fuck this, spirituality now. Like, let's find it. Let's connect with energy. Let's connect with nature. And I know that that's a concept that is not taboo, but like maybe a little bit dismissed in the UK.
Yeah, I think
Um,
I think spirituality wise and faith, I think we have changed a lot as a
mm,
culture and a society. Certainly, like a huge amount in the last 100 years. So I wanted to kind of separate the spirituality side of things because that is a path I want to kind of go
sure.
down. But I kind of wanted to just understand where we've kind of gone on the journey up to
Mm,
this far. So
right.
obviously we've had the event where
Mm-hmm.
there's a huge amount of challenge when you're in Colombia.
Mm,
There's a lot of challenges that are facing you. Your brain's telling you that a load of things are wrong. I wanted to pick up on that point because
mm-hmm.
actually so much of what you said hit me because there was a lot of it felt like things that are driving anxiety, things that are driving uncertainty,
Yeah.
and you're kind of wrestling with your brain because they're things that you're almost like rejecting. Now, for me,
Mm,
things that I've learned on my own journey and having done therapy, I've done hypnotherapy, and
mm-hmm.
now I'm doing some emotional agility work as well. Is that your brain is going to reject things that fundamentally on a biological level it doesn't understand and they're a threat
Yeah.
to you. And
Yeah.
so I think it's about for me and so one common theme that I see through people that have gone through challenging times and obviously have then taken the step to seek out therapy in order to I think understand those feelings better. That's
Mm-hmm.
truly what it is. It's not necessarily trying to fix or heal something that's fundamentally wrong within yourself. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's just actually being able to appreciate what's going on in your body, trying to appreciate actually these are the things that are going on in my brain. They're
Yeah.
rejecting it because it's trying to protect me at the end of the day
Yeah.
because it's trying to keep you safe. But as humans, we're not necessarily sophisticated to understand that real time. And it's only
Mm,
until you do that deep work and you actually go away and get like you say, through that, someone who's objective, someone who doesn't necessarily have an agenda on your own circumstance, but working
Mm.
through you to try and understand that at a deeper level.
Yeah.
That's I think how long term we can not necessarily again fix ourselves, but it's like when these things do happen in life, which they inevitably do, that's
Mm.
when we get the kind of understanding of what we're feeling.
Yeah, I think awareness and self-awareness is really, again, so important because, I mean, again, like I'll go back to it again with the tennis, if you lose, you analyze. And if you win, you analyze. And it's the same in rugby. Like, why did you win? Why did you make that shit pass? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so obviously growing up with that, being aware of why things happen is a skill that has just been ingrained into my DNA. Um, and it's funny because I'm extremely aware of myself, apart from when it counts. And that's when what you say about the brain protecting yourself. That's where you have. For me, I had a, and I still had it like within this year of this is how my body's feeling, and this is what my brain is doing, and my brain is doing this because of trauma, and that is a really strange place to be in because, I mean, for me, there were things happening physically that nice things, bear in mind, not like, not terrible things, but there were things happening with my body that my brain wasn't able to kind of stop from happening. And I was like, why is this happening to me? What is going on? And obviously only when the penny drops, when the event happens and you go, why
Yeah.
was I so stupid? And I read a book in the last, few months, which really shed some light on what you're talking about in terms of awareness and energies and manifestation. And it's fairly well known. It's the Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. Um, and he talks about how the brain and the body kind of interact and how thoughts can come from one of the two places. And suddenly knowing this, that you can have thoughts that come from your gut, it changed everything because it was kind of like, okay, like now if I know where this positive or negative thought is originating, if it's in here or if it's, down in my gut feeling, it gives me the ability to kind of understand what's going on. And again, like, these 3 years of healing, and it's, still, I've realized that I'm still on this journey of healing. Like it's not going to stop. It's something that I still have to go through, and still work on daily. And I'm obviously committed to that. But it's knowing that, again, like as we all know, like our brain will sometimes fuck with us because it just wants to. It's like, haha, dick, no, like stop. So being aware of that is hard, and especially in a world where there is so many distractions. Like again, me that works in social media and content and marketing, I don't use my phone anymore. Like I stopped posting. And which is terrible because obviously I'm trying to be a social media expert, but um, I just didn't want to. It was just like, I don't need this distraction. I don't need Uber to tell me to take a ride today. I don't need fucking Deliveroo being like, oh, why might you like this? No, shut the fuck up. Like this fake and manufactured dopamine and cortisol, get it out of my life. Like I need to be cleansed of it, if you want to, if you will. Um, and obviously when you take that away, your brain then starts to fuck with you again because it goes, oh, where's the distractions? Where's the distractions? I need more distractions. It's like, all right, okay, this is a process. So yeah, I think like being self-aware is so important because it doesn't just help you with you, it gives you the skill to be empathetic with others. And again, in a world which is so diluted and maybe superficial and full of content, good and bad, and stimulus, if you have that ability, like it's just going to make your life easier.
Yeah, I think empathy is one of the most valuable traits that we can have as human beings, especially when it comes to connectedness. Actually, one of the biggest drivers behind this podcast was that I've noticed in society, but also in myself, but in my immediate community, and maybe to people that this is reaching, is that we are struggling as humans with connection.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
some of the things that you're mentioning are driving us further apart. Social media is one
Mm.
of those which I feel like is, instead of making us more social, is definitely making us antisocial, and driving us further apart than ever before. One of the most impactful reads I've ever read is "Stolen Focus" by Johan Hari, who
Interesting.
goes into deep detail about the effects that all of these software and algorithms have on our conscious and unconscious.
Yeah.
He interviews a lot of people who actually design some of these algorithms. So he actually interviewed the guy that designed the infinite scroll at Google. And that was potentially one of the most dangerous bits of algorithm ever written, because
Mm.
you are now turning it from conscious, kind of voluntary content,
Mm.
like consumption, into involuntary, where you
Yeah.
don't even have to think about it. You're just on
Mm.
repeat, swiping all day, and that's stealing
Yeah.
our focus. And so
Yeah.
every minute that it's stealing our focus, we are not speaking to our family. We are not
Mm.
engaging in a passion that we really like. We're not
Yeah. Yeah.
even just simply giving ourselves some time to think and be bored. And one of the
Yeah.
best quotes I ever loved from Neil deGrasse Tyson is that some of the best moments in creativity ever in history will come from being bored, because it
Yeah.
allows your mind to wander and get to these creative solutions for problems that you never even thought of. That would never happen if your brain is constantly buzzing and full of content and noise and distraction,
Yeah.
like you say. So
Yeah.
I guess going back to what we were talking about before, and I really actually want to touch on the faith aspects of the conversation after this,
Mm.
but I
Sure.
think it's so important, like you say, to have that self awareness, not only for the ability to develop empathy and those skills that we're able to connect with others, but to truly listen to ourselves and to hear what's really going on. I think actually just to sit with yourself, to bring yourself up to this level of higher understanding, where it kind of unlocks that next level of life to a certain degree. And
Yeah.
you're always going to be learning that, right, throughout your whole life. And as we accumulate experience through life and different challenges will present themselves, you
Mm.
learn this more and more. But I think that going through this kind of journey of self-discovery, which it sounds like you are also on,
Mm.
when you get a better understanding of yourself, that allows you to enjoy life just that much more, I think.
Yeah. I think something that I've gone through recently is just simplifying it, like simplifying life. And I think now that I have done that, it puts more value on certain things. Like it stops you overthinking in certain ways. It allows you to focus more. It allows you to be more creative, more creative. Like I can't, obviously for me, like I'm in theory in a creative industry. You know, I'm a marketer and I'm a musician. Like those are two of probably the most creative industries you want to be in. But even then, like it's not just the work, it's the outlet. You know, how do you want to spend your time? You know, this will sound mental, but I went and sat by the river for like 2 hours on Saturday because I just didn't want to do anything else. Like, sat there and journaled. What the fuck? Like, I get how mad that sounds, but it's all I wanted to do. And it was like, I sat by this river. It was flowing for 2 hours in front of me. A squirrel walked straight in front of me, then looked at me and was just like, okay, I'm going to move on. You know, like the time, like the weight that that has in in your psyche and in your body when you just do that. Like phone was on airplane mode, had no like AirPods nowhere to be seen. Like it was so simple. And then I went off and saw friends and did other things and was back on my phone when I needed to be. And doing all these other things. But like that weight of just, let's simplify this. Let's just relax a bit, and what you said about boredom, people are like, oh, I'm bored, I'll go on TikTok. That's not boredom. That's not boredom. Like genuinely, that is distraction. And we're confusing it as boredom. And as you've said about algorithms, these algorithms know how to manipulate you. They know what your confirmation bias is. They know what your negative bias is. They know what you like and what you don't like and what you're going to react to and engage to. Like, it's all designed to keep you on the platform. And again, from my point of view in work, that's great. Like, pay me. Thanks. Amazing. But from a personal perspective, as a man and as a human in this world, I go, yeah, I don't want to use it. And it's funny, like I heard a podcast, I was listening to a podcast yesterday of some content creator that I'd never heard of. And I had a look at her and she's doing really well. And she said something really interesting where she was like, I don't consume now that I create as much as I create because I want to come up with ideas myself. And I think I've had that position where you're kind of like, okay, where do my ideas come from? And I think now what I'm doing is I'm finding more kind of originality in reading of books and allowing the mind to kind of construct its own kind of perception of what these stories are trying to tell you. But then, okay, if I'm going to watch a movie, the phone is in the other room. I'm on one screen and one screen only. And then you start to watch it with a little bit more intention and you go, oh, hang on. I loved that transition. I loved that shot. How do I replicate that for a video that I need to create for either me or a client? And so the inspiration from boredom starts to kind of come out. And I think, like, I saw a great tweet yesterday. Someone like taking the piss where they were just like, the fact that everyone's trying to become a DJ is the first sign of a recession, right? And I took it and went, no, the fact that everybody is trying to become a DJ is the fact that they miss creativity. And it's the most popular way of finding creativity quickly that also has a payoff, right? Because if you're just going to sit and, I don't know, watercolor for yourself and yourself only, what's the payoff? Oh, in theory, it's only for you. But shouldn't that just be enough? But obviously, if you become a DJ and really good and famous, you're going to be David Guetta and travel the world and be on the top of the Empire State Building performing. Yeah, but again, be creative for yourself. Like, fulfill what you need to fulfill. And if it comes with an end product, oh, great, cool, go for it. I don't make music because I'm like, yeah, I want the money, I want the lifestyle. No, I make music because I fucking love it.
I think so much of what you talked about is really just honing in on presence, and I think it's truly one of the greatest things that we can strive to be is presence. Because when you're truly in present mind state, then that's when you're going to experience all the best things that are happening in the world. And I think it's very difficult to get to that point, but a lot of the examples that you're talking
Yeah.
about, I think, is the practice of being more present. I think at the moment we're really struggling with that in society. You know, I'm sure if we were talking about the problems in society when it comes to connectedness and the problems with social media, we will most likely be here till next
Yeah.
Christmas. But I wanted to hone in slightly a little bit more on maybe some of the things that have been happening more recently, but also how your kind of experimentation with spirituality has played into that, and kind of the more recent experiences that you can share as well that you've had.
Yeah. What's that quote? There's a great quote, something like, it takes a second for it to all fall apart, but it takes forever for it to come back together. And that's exactly what happened. I think, like, I made a decision after finishing kind of my 2-year therapy process of just kind of relaxing, being me and not thinking about anything and not, having that pressure to do something, just be me. And it was great until it wasn't. Yeah. And within a week, my love life fell apart, my job fell apart. music really started to kind of not fall apart, but really kind of like show teething problems, which, I would say those are three pillars of my life, and three of the most important pillars of my life. And it was, yeah, it was tough. You just go, what the fuck? Like, I have just gone a month ago, I've gone through one of the most amazing performances of my life, and now I don't know what to do. Like, what? And I realized like what it was doing, because it was kind of like, you're ready for all of this, but not yet. You're still not there. You still have to sort things out. You still have to grow in a different way. And obviously, astrologically, um, between the ages of like 27 and 32, like you go through a Saturn return. Now, I'm not that big in astrology. I do believe in it in some way. I don't know how it fits in with my life at the moment, so I'm figuring that out. Because I do believe that all these ancient civilizations that had powerful connections with the cosmos, why do they all have that? Like, there has to be something there, but I just don't know what that is for me yet. Like, I'm trying to figure that out. So that's also part of the journey. And so I started reading, that the Joe Dispenza book, which gave me a lot of clarity about manifestation, how energy works. Because again, it's like, energy and manifestation get such a bad reputation online. It's just like, oh, that's just for fucking fairies and witches, But then actually, like, and this is why I say, like, things have happened to me in these last 3 years that I never asked for. I never came here with these intentions. I just came here because I knew I had to be here. And so then when it happens to you, you turn around and go, oh, yeah, maybe there's something here. Maybe there is something here. And the more that these little coincidences kind of start to rack up, you do just go, okay, I need to lean into this. I need to at least go down the path to give it a chance and see where it takes me. And meditation was introduced to me during my tennis days. I was probably 15. Do you think a fucking 15-year-old wants to hear about meditation? Like, come off it, like, please. But it returned, and you suddenly give it notice, and you suddenly give it intention, and you go, actually, this does help. Actually, this does serve me. Actually, this does give me focus, and it's what you say about being present. Like, meditation isn't about clearing your mind and not thinking about anything. No, meditation is being as present as possible, whether you disconnect and then you reconnect. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you can talk to any monk you want to, and they will tell you, it doesn't matter if you disconnect. It's about reconnecting. And it's the process of reconnecting. So meditation is one thing that's kind of come into my life day and night, part of the routine, like 20 minutes. I had to build up to it. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like I just went boom, like, oh, I can meditate for an hour. Fuck no. Like, that shit is practice. Guided breathing, like, going through this. And again, like, if you want to look into any research, go to Andrew Huberman, go to, all these kind of podcasts that talk about it and scientifically talk about it. And they're like, this has an effect, as well as like opening up things to kind of journaling. I never was a big writer. I fucking hated writer. I'm dyslexic. I always struggled writing quickly, but guess what? I am journaling constantly, not constantly throughout the day, but like, I journal every day. Like, it's now a record of what's going on in this process. And that strangely has comfort. Like, it's kind of, you kind of sit there and you go, did I really take advantage of today? What happens if I wake up frustrated? How am I going to try and just ease that? It's not turning it, because again, like, sometimes you can have, I've been cautious of, having, if I'm like down here and I'm frustrated, I don't necessarily want to peak so quickly. Like, that's because if you peak that quickly, you could crash as quickly, so it's kind of, how do you just turn the tide slowly and keep stable and keep consistent and keep disciplined. And the other thing, that was extremely, extremely strange was my therapist said to me, like, just go and sit in a church, just sit there. And I'm not one for religion. I don't necessarily conform to the practice of, repenting endlessly for your sins, being told by some priest, I can completely acknowledge the positive impact of community and everything, and I think that is valuable. But religion still there's still a block there. Let's say. I mean, I'm open to it, but you never know. And I went and sat in this church, and it just opened up doors that I was like, Christ, is this what I've been missing? And again, as I've said, the energy of and the power of the universe that has taken me down this path, which I dreamt of when I was younger, and I tried when I was 18, to do music in London and in the UK, and it traumatized me. And to then go back on that journey and have a second chance, Christ, I didn't ask for it. I didn't want it. I didn't, it wasn't in my plans. And so again, leaning into it, going to the church, doors opening, pulling you towards that. It was I know it sounds crazy and I know it sounds mad, but it happened. Like, I can't explain it.
Well, it's not bad because it's your experience, right? But
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of what you just said is so interesting. I'm just going to try and kind of recap my understanding of it. So
Yeah, go for it.
obviously you've had like a very challenging experience in more recent times, and obviously we don't need to go into specific details of that. But at the back of that, experience, and especially through loss and through professional challenges, you've then taken some time to reflect and also engage in a lot of these practices. A lot of these practices that are quite well known, obviously all subjective, and it's all to do with your own experience, but
Yeah.
have brought things to light to you that weren't necessarily evident before. And you talked a bit about how you are following your intuition and you're recognizing certain paths and avenues that have kind of presented themselves to you, that you are now in a place where you're trusting yourselves to go down those avenues. I was just kind of curious, where are those avenues presented themselves? Is it kind of as a result of these practices that you're doing? Can they be in everyday life, or what is it that's kind of presenting you to yourself so that you go, yeah, okay, let's follow that little path down there?
Uh, I think it's not like gambling, right? And I don't mean let's go to the casino. Like, no, like I sent off a proposal last week, which I haven't heard back from. I don't expect to hear back from them, but it was the chance of, I walked past this paddle club and I was like, oh, should I just go in and just have a look at it before I send off the proposal? They're not going to know that I walked in, and unless they find this podcast and understand English, they might know. But I walked in and I was like, okay, cool. And I start looking around and I speak to the guy behind the counter, and as I just walk round to go to see the courts, I noticed that he had like a slinger bag, and a slinger bag is this little portable kind of suitcase which launches either tennis balls or pickleball balls or paddle balls, so that you can play by yourself, you can train by yourself. And I was the creative director for that company when I got here, and I was their creative director for a year, and they don't have a distributor in this country. So I see this bag and I'm like, what are the chances that this club that I'm trying to negotiate with has the bag? And I took that chance of going, I am a bit late for my first meeting of the day, but I'll just pop in. I'll just pop in and see. It's 2 minutes. And ultimately nothing's happened at the moment. But that little chance allowed me to then include that name and my work for them and the connection I still have with them in the proposal. And yeah, some people might turn around and go, "Oh, what are you fucking talking about? It's just complete utter bollocks." Like, but if those little things start happening every now and then, like if you don't knock on those doors, if you don't ask, if you don't ask, you won't receive. And my dad always told me that, like, if you don't ask, you might not receive, you won't receive. And one of the things that my therapist said to me when I got to church, when she said go to church, was, if you want, ask him for shit. Ask him for what you want. And I asked God for certain things. And that week turned into the strangest week in my life, where things just started moving out of absolutely nowhere. And it was like, okay, like maybe I am. This is what I'm saying. Like this discipline of the last 5 months of the meditation, the breathing, the journaling, the gym, the eating, the rigid regimen of just, I need to do this just so I feel good and I can kind of block it out. But then I was getting to the point like a few weeks ago where I was like, not that I was ever going to stop it, but it was like, why am I still doing this? I don't feel like I'm seeing the results, right? And obviously you don't do this because you're like, oh, I want to be selfish. I want to have a shitload of money. Like, no, you do it because you want to feel better, right? But then when it clicks and then you have that week where it's like, what's just happening? Like, that's come out of nowhere. This has come out of nowhere. You've all come out of nowhere. You turn around and go, that little 1% every day makes a fucking difference. That chipping away of the problem breaks it down. That next step allows you to climb that mountain a little bit further. And then when you start to see these glimmers in your life and you ask for it and you repeatedly ask for it and you repeatedly work for it and go, okay, I'll take care of my energy. I'll take care of my discipline. But if there's a higher power in this world, which I do believe that there is, that they will also take care of that, And so,
yeah, sorry, go on.
no, I was just gonna say, like, so obviously, like when it then happens, you do turn around and go, "What the spooky fuck was that?"
Yeah.
You know?
I think so you mentioned gambling before. For me, what it feels like is that there's a lot more confidence in just backing the decisions that you're making, but then also trusting the process in that way, and also manifesting things. So rather than you mentioned the process of like asking for God, and obviously
Mm.
faith is not necessarily something that I'm currently practicing a lot. It's important for a lot of people, of course, but I think that process of manifesting something into existence, even to be speaking it to yourself, so that you're
Yeah.
willing yourself almost on to realize these visions and
Mm.
realize these things over time, with intention and practice and consistent commitment to what you're trying to do and that long-term vision, and like you say, the 1%ers over time, then
Yeah.
there's no kind of coincidence as to why these things come to fruition in the long term.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, 100%. I mean, it's funny. Like I remember back in the day, I watched the video of The Secret, the extremely famous book, and it was great. But and I haven't really kept up to date with it, but in the moment, it was very much like, oh, if you just envision yourself with a shitload of money, you'll get it. It will come to you. And it's like, yeah, but what if I don't do the work? If I don't buy a lottery ticket, I'm not going to win the lottery. And so it's very much that balance of, let me just take care of it. I will, from my end, do everything that I need to do in the day to just get that 1% closer. And obviously the laws of attraction of the universe go by, once you get 95% of the way there, the last 5%, it'll come. Like, they'll bring it, it'll be delivered. Um, and that is something that obviously has always given me comfort, because I've known that for a while. But being aware of it is different, like being aware of, okay, actually, have I actually taken advantage of what today could have been. No, or yes. Um, and I think that the switch for me has been like, now that I've found that connection and found that kind of spirituality, it was incredible how like my overthinking and anxiety of the future just kind of vanished, because it was like, okay, if my only job is to be the best that I can be today, come rain, come shine, because if it's a good day, that was a perfect day. If it was a bad day, that was how it was meant to be. So how did you deal with it? Did you have empathy for yourself? Did you have empathy for others? Did you have compassion for yourself? Did you breathe through the fucking problem? Yes or no? You know, but that was the way that the day was meant to go. And that was what it was meant to teach you that day. But tomorrow is still in the hands of somebody else until I wake up. And so that was a really key shift for me to just stop having any anxiety around the future. And obviously, look, I'm not saying I sit here and go, oh, I have no anxiety around the future. Of course I fucking do. Of course. Like, there's obviously so many things that are not in my control. But I think once you abdicate that and go, okay, what's the point of me worrying about today's Wednesday? What's the point of me worrying about Saturday when I'm 3 days from it? There's no point. It's wasted energy. Let's apply that to something else that I need to do today.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a great attitude, and I feel like it's obvious that it's serving you. And again, it just speaks to the importance of presence, being in the moment, and living each day, right? So,
Yeah.
no, mate, it's good to hear. Now, before we kind of wrap up, obviously, I think
Oh.
you self-professed maybe you've gone a little bit AWOL and quiet of late,
Mm.
but obviously you've got so much to look forward to, and I want
Mm.
you to kind of maybe like this is your opportunity to maybe say like what's going to be going on in your life going forward, things that we have to look forward to from you as well, as obviously I'm vested in the music career as well, and I'm looking forward to downloading these tunes. But like, what's coming up for you, and what have we got to look forward to?
um, ooh, more music, 100%. There's something that happened to me. I injured my voice in, I think it was May. Um, Gave it a little bit too much welly recording the third song. I mean, when you hear it, you'll be like, "Oh, yeah, I can hear why." Um, and obviously, that because of that, you have to slow down. You have to turn around and go, "Okay, right, like back to basics." Well, I didn't manage that well, so I think soon more music, new music, hopefully more shows. I want to sing live. I want to sing as much as possible because um, that's what I love doing. What else? I mean, to be honest, mate, I haven't thought that far ahead. I mean, I know that I'll be traveling a little bit. I'll let you know off camera where, um, and then yeah. To be honest, my plans really are just to find that new normal, um, and allow that new normal to give me the space and the time to be as creative as possible. Um, I know, I know that my journey, you take the creativity out of that, and I'm not, I'm not the person um, that I want to be. So in terms of plans, like, yeah, there's nothing concrete, and that's kind of the way that I like it because it means that anything can happen.
Oh, I love that, mate. It's a beautiful way to conclude. I mean, I want to thank you genuinely from the bottom of my heart for coming on and sharing your story so openly and so vulnerably. I think super admirable, but also to see that you've gone through some challenges in the last few years. A lot of
Mm,
them, like it's quite evident that it kind of shook you to your core in terms of what you believed in and your values and some of the things and the ways that you're living your life. But then, in
mm,
response to that, to then look within, commit to doing the work and actually understanding yourself a little bit deeper, having the bravery to seek out help in the form of therapy and experimenting with that, and
Mm.
now following your own path through self-discovery. It just shows how powerful that these practices can be, and that's kind of one of the biggest points I want people to get from your story, is that when we
Mm.
actually do kind of not let other people and situations dictate our narrative, and then we look within and do that self-discovery and that practice, whatever that looks like, because it has an infinite amount of forms, that there
Yeah.
definitely is light at the end of the tunnel, and you can see that you've got a lot of life about you, you've got singing to look forward to, there are so many things to look forward to for Oli, and that's all a testament to your hard work and dedication to the process, and to everything
Yeah.
that you've done for yourself, my friend. So I want to
Cheers,
say
mate.
I'm celebrating you. I really appreciate you coming on. I know that we had also desires to speak about mental health holistically, also how it's
Hmm.
represented on social media. So I'm actually
Oof.
going to tease people with that, because that's coming on a part 2, if Ollie
Yeah.
agrees to, off camera, of course.
Oh, 100%.
But yeah,
No,
so I'd love to talk about that deeper.
yeah, I think the general conversation of mental health, especially around the mobile phone and social media, it's ramping up. It's 100% needed, and especially for me, someone that works in that space and that field, I see a lot of terrible habits and terrible things, and I'm please also don't mistake me. Like, I, up until 3 months ago, I also had terrible social media and phone habits. It was really, again, part of the process that made me go, okay, morning till night, I'm going to have the focus modes scheduled. Certain people can reach me, certain people can't reach me. I don't need to have I don't need to have every single app on my phone sending me a notification. I'm going to wipe that all away. And yeah, it's really necessary. I mean, it's seriously damaging.
Yeah,
Seriously.
I think it's a critical conversation that needs to happen, and not just obviously with us two, but in general.
Mm,
So I
mm.
look forward to that, my friend, and to
Yeah,
you,
me
the
too.
listener. I want to thank you very much for being here. I hope you really found that really open, insightful, kind of messy, but like in a beautiful way, conversation about Ollie's story. Really enjoyable and really insightful, and you
Mm.
can gain lessons from it. Thank you very much for being with us. I'm going to do that classic content creator thing where I'm going to say like and subscribe and all that stuff. Go on.
One more thing,
Hmm.
and this will sound fucking wanky, um, but it was something that happened to me 2 weeks ago. That, this whole process of cleansing and wiping away kind of this manufactured dopamine and cortisol and reconnecting and rebirth and all that kind of stuff. I had a moment that has never happened to me before, and I don't know whether it will happen ever again, but it was a moment that really allowed me to realize the power that my mind and body had. And it was in the dead of night. It was like 3 in the morning, and kept me awake for like 2 hours. And I had to wake up at 5 anyway to work in Sweden, live streaming tennis. But it was this moment of, wow, like, that is genuinely the powerful energy that the body and the mind can create. And when that happens to you, yeah, there's obviously no turning back. So, I think my plea is, if you're going to go down that journey, just be ready for unbelievable moments to happen and be grateful for it.
Awesome. Beautiful way to end. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Ollie. And we will
Cheers,
see
mate.
you again
Thanks for having me.
very, very soon.
Sick.
Woo!
Nice. How was that?
Good, mate. Yeah, that was wow. That